Hey everybody, it's Miss Peak, and today we're going to talk about The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Chapter 1, and we're going to be doing some activities with each chapter. So if you can find your reading notebook that I sent home with you, that would be great, so you can keep all these things together, so you can keep it, and then it'll all be together. If you can't find your reading notebook, find another notebook so it can all stay together. Today in Chapter 1, we're going to talk about what happened in the story, and then we're going to focus on the setting. The setting is the place and the time that the story took place. So in Chapter 1, we find out that Dorothy's the main character, and she lives with her aunt and her uncle because she is an orphan. That means that her parents have died, and she lives in a place called Kansas. Now, if you remember in our classroom, the rug in the floor that we sat on, it had the map of the United States. Now, Kansas is kind of in the middle of the United States, and it's a great big prairie. And a prairie is very flat land. And in those areas, they have a lot of what are called cyclones or tornadoes. So what happens is there is a tornado, and unfortunately, Dorothy doesn't make it into the cellar with her Aunt Em, and the tornado takes the house up in the air and spins her around and around, and finally she falls asleep. and that's the end of the chapter. So if you'll get your notebook, we're gonna talk about the setting. And if you turn to a clean sheet of paper, and in the middle we're gonna write the word setting in a big circle. And out from it, we're going to make 4 lines. We're going to talk about 4 different parts of the setting. So if you make 4 big boxes, that way you have plenty of room to write. Okay, in the first box, this is going to be the place. The second box is the time. The fourth box is the importance. And the fourth box is the mood. So if you'll get your notebook, and you can pause the video, that way you have time to create this in your notebook. And then once you're done, you can unpause it, and we'll start up here with place. So the place that she's at is a place called Kansas, right? We're going to add the word Kansas. And how can we describe Kansas? Kansas is a prairie. And they use a lot of adjectives to describe Kansas. They call it dull and gray and flat. And on this prairie, Dorothy lives with her aunt and her uncle, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry, and they live in a little 1-room house. And if you remember, when I read the chapter, it said that Uncle Henry was going to go check on the stock. The stock are the animals that they have on their farm. So they live on a farm. So if you have that there. And like they described, Kansas has really bad weather sometimes because it's so flat. All right, now let's go over to time. Now, this book was written a long time ago. It was written around 1900. So probably the time that this was written is about the same time, somewhere around 1900. So that's over 100 years ago. So of course, as we're reading, there's going to be things that happen that may not sound like what we do today, and that's okay. We'll talk about that when we do our videos about how things are a little bit different. Then let's go down to the importance. Now, this setting is important because as we keep reading in Chapter 2, we're going to see that there's a huge contrast between Kansas and where she ends up, which is called Oz. So the setting is very important because she was such a bright, vibrant child. She loved to laugh, but everything else around her was so dull, gray, even the people, the place that she lived. So it's going to be, so Kansas is a huge contrast. Remember, contrast means how they're different. Remember, compare and contrast? Contrast is the differences. So Kansas is a huge contrast to Oz. It's going to show how different they are. And then the last square is the mood. The mood is the feeling of the book so far. Everything is very, very serious in the first chapter. They don't laugh very much. Everything's dull and gray. So everyone and everything is serious or sober or solemn or gloomy, stern. It said that Aunt Em used to be a vibrant young lady, but now she's all gray and she never laughs. So everything's very serious in this chapter. And that's going to be another contrast. The mood is going to be changing too for chapter 2. So if you get this in your notebook and start thinking about how the things are going to be changing for Dorothy, and I hope that I'll see you next time, okay guys? Bye!